Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our session 8 for operating systems basics. Now, guys, if you haven't watched session 8 lecture, I suggest you to do so. This is our session 8 optional lecture. This is going to be a pretty quick instruction for you guys on how to access our Opsys virtual lab. Okay, and I've just included that this session is optional because some of you guys won't actually need access to our virtual lab environment. However, for those of you guys that haven't completed the assessment yet and weren't able to image windows when we were in our physical labs, this session is definitely for you. All right, so let's get started then. So what do we have here? Announcements first. So guys, make sure you message your instructor for invitation link to the lab. All right. So we are controlling access to the labs, and the way that we are able to do that is that we are sending invitation links for those of you guys that actually need access to the lab. You will need an email address to access the link, and this is going to be useful for you, like I already said. If you don't have access to a Windows machine, so let's say you have access to something else, maybe you have a tablet or you only have your smartphone whatsoever. So what you need to do is you need to download a remote desktop client, and then you should be able to access the lab, the virtual lab. You were not able to finish project 1 before the break, so if you're one of these students, this is definitely something you should be looking for. This is definitely an environment that is going to allow you to do the prac and to do the assessment as well. If you want to have some hands-on practice on a cloud solution. So what happens is Microsoft Azure is a cloud solution offered by Microsoft, and it allows us to deploy a virtual lab environment for you students. So even though you have already completed the assessments and everything else, it would be amazing for you to, have a go and try to do some things in the cloud environment. Yeah. All right, so once you get the invitation link, you should be able to register for the lab. So once you receive the email from either Daniel or I, you should receive a message like this one. And when you click into register for the lab, you should be able to have a tab in your lab virtual machines, and that's going to show every one of the labs that you registered for. So in my case, I have this personal account that I have registered for Enterprise Networks Lab and Opsys Lab. So what do I do next? So basically, before you get access to the lab, you need to start the lab first. And as you guys can see, you have some sort of a radio button that right next to it, it shows the virtual machine state. In this case, I have a stop virtual machine on the left and one virtual machine on the right that I have just started. So once you start the virtual machine, it takes a few times for the virtual machine to boot and for you to gain access to the environment. All right. So once the virtual machine is in running state, you will see that the radio button will become blue, and you see the running state right next to the button as well. Another thing is that you see the desktop icon right next to the running state. It became blue. So now you should be able to do a remote connection to this machine. All right. So once again, when you click into the blue desktop icon, you will download an RDP file. So this RDP file, RDP stands for Remote Desktop Protocol. All right. So it's a protocol that allows us to do a remote connection to another computer. And yeah, so once you get this file, you should be able to have a program that is able to open a remote desktop session. So if you're running Windows already, most Windows operating systems, they will have RDP Client by default. So you can just open up the RDP file and your Windows should be able to remote into the computer. All right. So once you open that file, when your system is able to open that RDP session, you'll be prompted to enter the password credentials. So here, guys, there's no magic here. It's pretty much the same password that we use at our physical lab. So it's just password 01 with capital P. All right. You can choose to remember the password, so the next time you remote into the virtual lab, you don't need to enter the credential again. All right. So once you type that, you should be able to get inside your virtual lab. Okay. So what we basically have in our virtual lab here. So I'm showing that on the bottom corner on the right. As you guys can see, it's just a Windows 10 machine, very similar to what we already have at CIT in our physical lab. I have customized it a little bit so that it's easy for you guys to identify that you are logged in properly. As you guys can see, I have left a few programs in the desktop. As you guys can see, a few shortcuts. You have Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, HyperV, and a folder called ISOs. So the capabilities, guys, HyperV is enabled by default in this virtual lab, so you don't have to worry about enabling it. You will have some ISO images that are needed for you to do the assessment and do some of the pregs. Okay, so once again, it's in the desktop folder. So you will have access to a Windows 10 machine, a Linux Ubuntu machine as well. You will also have access to all of the Windows tools that we have learned in session 7 or even session 8. You have internet access as well. And make sure you shut down your machine, guys. So basically what happens is a few students, they are using the virtual machines, they forget to shut down the machines. So what happens here is, guys, we're CIT's paying to use these hardware resources on the cloud. So what we have here is we have established a quota for all the students. So once you guys register for this lab, you will have a 10-hour quota. So what happens is if you just leave the virtual machine in a running state, even though you're not connected to the virtual machine, you need to understand that the machine is still running. So you need to remember to shut down your machine, otherwise you're just going to run out of quota, and you won't be able to do the rest of the preg or even the assessment. So guys, remember, this is one of the most important things I like to highlight here in this session. Remember to shut down your machine. With all of that being said, guys, this is the end of presentation. So I hope you guys have all a nice time and a nice experience. Have fun trying to do the preg. Have fun trying to image the HyperV virtual machines that you make in your virtual environment. And if you have any questions, just reach out to your instructor, and we're going to be here, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Okay, see you next time, guys. Bye.